ye, hear ye. The U.S. District Court for the Middle District of Ohio, Mock City, Ohio, is now open pursuant to adjournment. All those having business with this honorable court, come near, give attention, and ye shall be heard. You may be seated. Will all witnesses giving testimony in these proceedings please step forward? Raise your right hand. You solemnly swear that testimony you are about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, and that your testimony complies with the rules and regulations of the Ohio mock trial competition? I do. You may be seated.
Before we begin, I'll ask plaintiff's counsel and defendant's counsel to introduce themselves and their team members and their roles, please.
I'm Ben Thompson, directing counsel for the prosecution.
I'm Brandon Camias, I'm crossing counsel for the prosecution.
And this is Toya King, she'll be playing the part of West Bay. And this is Susan Beavers, Law and Order.
My name is Bill Lutmer. I'm co-counsel for the defense.
My name is Matt Turner. I'm crossing counsel for the defense.
Holly Ruler is being played by Jennifer Howe, and Katrina Corbett is playing the role of Bobby Ruler.
My name is Judge Colmanan. These are Judges McFadden to my immediate right and Judge Metzler to my very far right. Okay, let's get started. We're here today in the matter of H. Roller. And I would like to ask, first of all, if the prosecution, the plaintiff, would like to make an opening statement.
Just with you, Honor. Ladies and gentlemen of the court, we are here today to try Holly Roller in a matter of a curfew violation. When everything is complete, after you've heard all of the testimony, you will have to make your decision based upon the facts. The facts are these. Holly Roller, age 16, on the night of May 19, 1994, was given a curfew citation for remaining in a public place after 11 p.m. She had no legitimate supervised activity that caused her to stay in Charlie Fromage's restaurant after the known curfew hour. We will be calling to the stand Officer Law and Order. She is the officer who gave Ms. Roller her citation. Officer Order will testify to the facts that Holly Roller was in a public place after the known curfew hour and was not engaged in any type of legitimate supervised activity. We will also be calling Les Fay to the stand. She will testify that Holly was in the restaurant after the curfew hour. She will also testify that the group that Holly was with was not engaged in the supervised activity that they claim, and they also were not supervised by an adult. Through the testimony of these witnesses, we will prove beyond a reasonable doubt that Holly Roller is guilty of violating the curfew ordinance. Roller's defense is that she was protecting her religion. She was practicing her religion of eclecticism at the time that she was given the citation. However, eclecticism is not a religion. It is, at best, a secular philosophy that merits no protection. Even if it was a religion, Holly Roller was not engaged in its practice at the time that she received the citation. In addition, juveniles are not guaranteed the same constitutional rights or freedom of assembly that are given to adults. According to Ordinance Number 21309, commonly known as the Curfew Ordinance, quote, "The City of New Provincial has an obligation to provide for the protection of minors from each other and from other persons, for the enforcement of parental control over and the responsibility for children, for the protection of the general public, and for the reduction of incidents of juvenile criminal activities," unquote. Under this ordinance, a violation occurs when a person under the age of 17 remains in any public place within the city or on the premises of an establishment within the city after the curfew hours. The curfew hours are from 11 p.m. until 6 a.m. on the following day. This is Sunday through Thursday. And the curfew hours for Friday and Saturday are 12:01 a.m. until 6 a.m. Holly Roller had an opportunity to know the time while she was in Charlie Fromage's restaurant. She was aware of the consequences of choosing to remain in a public place after the curfew hour. Now she must face the consequences of her choice. Thank you.
Mr. Lutmer, would the defense like to make an opening statement?
Yes, it would, Your Honor. May it please the court, counsel. We are all familiar with Thomas Jefferson. He penned the Declaration of Independence and is one of the most respected founding fathers of this nation. Jefferson once wrote, "Our particular principles of religion are a subject of accountability to our God alone. I inquire that after no man's, and trouble none with mine, nor is it given in this life for us to know whether yours or mine, our friends or foes, are exactly right." What Jefferson was telling us as a nation was that this country was founded on religious freedom. Respect for others to worship is paramount to our independence. Today, in this courtroom, we are faced with three questions. The first of which is whether or not eclecticism is a religion, whether within the meaning of the new provincial curfew ordinance or within the meaning of the First Amendment to the United States Constitution. The second question we must answer is whether or not Miss Roller was engaged in a religious activity on the night she was cited. The final question facing the court is whether or not the curfew ordinance is unconstitutional, either facially or as applied to the facts in this case. Is eclecticism religion? To answer this, we must ask ourselves, are we willing to go back on the principles this country was founded on? Or are we going to commit ourselves to justice and acknowledge that no man is worthy of deciding what is and what is not a religion? Now we must address whether or not Miss Roller was engaged in a religious activity on the night she was cited. As you will hear, Miss Roller was studying as she would have at any other Thursday night meeting when she had to go to the bathroom. True, she may not have been participating in a religious activity while she was in the bathroom, but that does not change the fact that she was attending a religious meeting. The final question we are faced with today is whether or not the curfew is unconstitutional. New Provincial enacted a curfew immediately following an isolated incident that did not even occur within the city. After the nearby city of Blighted Metropolis enacted a curfew, New Provincial played copycat and based on no facts whatsoever enacted a curfew of their own. Are we willing to take away a teenager's right to gather and study her religion just because she does it after the time the city has set up for her? These teenagers are not causing trouble. In a way, they're trying to prevent it by studying their religion and improving their lifestyle. Today, the prosecution has the sole burden of proof. They must prove to you beyond a reasonable doubt that Holly Roller is guilty, for by law she is innocent until proven otherwise. I submit to you that after today's trial is through, the prosecution will have no way proven themselves beyond a reasonable doubt, and therefore you must decide in favor of Holly Roller and one of our founding fathers, Thomas Jefferson. My colleague and I thank you for your time.
Let's have the first witness for the prosecution, please.
If may please court, prosecution calls West Side to the stand.
You may proceed.
Please state your name for the court.
Les Faye.
Are you employed?
Yes, I'm assistant manager at Charlie LHS.
What is Charlie's?
It's a privately owned restaurant open to the public in New Provincial, Ohio.
Are there any groups or gangs that hang out at Charlie LHS?
Local teens and the younger college kids. The only drawback for the college kids is that we don't serve alcohol.
Why do they hang out there?
Well, we have good and expensive food and a large supply of video games. We have some of the best video games in the area, all of them on cutting edge.
Have there been any problems in the past?
Yes,
What problems have there been?
sometimes the high school kids would poke fun at the college kids for hanging out with them instead of someone in their college. In return, the college kids would pretty much dump on the high school kids for being just that, high school kids.
Are you aware of a curfew ordinance in the city of
Yeah.
New Provincial?
Yeah.
What effect has this curfew ordinance had on the problems at Charlie LHS?
Things have really quieted down since the curfew law was passed. The high school kids usually leave before the college kids even come in.
Are there any groups that meet at Charlie LHS?
Yes,
What groups meet there?
there's some type of eclectic group that meets there.
What do you know about the First Eclectic Church?
Well, I'm somewhat familiar with it because I attended a couple meetings in college. As I understand it, it's sort of like a book club that samples different kinds of religions.
Who are the members of the previously mentioned group?
There's April, Holly, Jess, and B are the main members of the group.
Is Holly here in this courtroom today?
Yes, she is.
Could you please identify her for the court?
She's sitting over there with the brown and white shirt.
Please let the record show that the witness has identified the defendant, Holly Roller.
Record so reflect.
How often will the group meet at Charlie's?
About every Thursday.
And how long will the meetings last?
About an hour or so.
What did the group normally do after the meeting was dismissed?
They usually stuck around, talked, and played video games.
Did Charlie Fromage offer any incentive to the group?
Yes, with every 5 large pieces that they ordered, Charlie would let them accumulate some extra tokens, and they've accumulated quite a lot of them over the past few months.
Was Holly in the eclectic study group present on the night of May 19th?
Yes, she was.
And what day of the week was that?
It was a Thursday.
Did Officer Order come in that night?
Yes.
What was Holly doing when Officer Order entered?
She was standing behind Jess Kidding at the morbid combat machine.
What time was it?
It was after 11.
And how did you know the time?
I looked up at the clock in the front of the restaurant.
How long after she entered did Officer Order take to approach the group standing behind the morbid combat machine?
She looked around briefly, then went over to the group that was by the morbid combat machine.
How did Officer Order treat the group?
She treated them fine. She asked Jess and the other group for their identification, and then gave Holly a roller citation.
What was the attitude of the teenagers after Officer Order left the restaurant?
They were upset with the officer, and Jess kept referring to her as the Gestapo.
Thank you. Any questions? No further questions.
Cross.
Yes, Your Honor. May we proceed?
You may.
You were at Charlie's on the night of May 19th,
Yes.
and you were working both the dining room and the kitchen that night.
Yes.
You didn't see most of the meeting that occurred that night.
No, I didn't.
Someone cashed out the group that night too.
Yes.
You saw Officer Order enter the building,
Yes.
and you saw him make a direct beeline for the group of teenagers.
My eyes might have deceived me, but that's what I thought.
Officer Order was pretty wound up when he entered the building, wasn't he?
Sometimes it is, but I'm not sure about that day.
On that particular night, Officer Order was pretty wound up.
Yes, sort of.
You heard the officer ask the group what they were doing,
Yes.
but you did not hear any of the other things that were said in the conversation.
No, I couldn't hear them. They were too far away.
Jess usually floats in and out of the meetings at Charlie's,
Yes.
so it's possible that he could have left the table before the meeting was ever over.
Yes.
Thank you, Your Honor. We have no further questions.
Redirect.
Were you supervising the group that night?
No, I wasn't.
Thank you.
Any recross?
No.
You may step down. Next witness for the prosecution, please.
If it may please the court, prosecution would like to call Officer Law and Order.
You may proceed.
Please state your name to the court.
Officer Law and Order.
What is your background in law enforcement?
I graduated from Agricola College in 1989 with a bachelor's degree in law enforcement.
Do you have any military experience?
Yes, I served in the military police for 3 years.
How did your military career end?
Your Honor, I object. What is the relevancy of this line of questioning?
Response to the objection on the basis of relevance.
I'm just giving the officer's background in law enforcement as to their conduct on that night.
Objections overruled.
How did your military career end?
I was honorably discharged in July of 1993
And where did you seek employment after you received your honorable discharge from the military?
in my hometown of New Provincial, Ohio.
Are you still employed there?
Yes, I am.
What department are you employed with?
I'm currently on radio car patrol.
And is that in the police department?
Yes.
Why did you choose New Provincial?
Because this is my hometown, and I recently observed the rise in crime, and I wanted to do my best to preserve the hometown that I grew up in.
What, if any, community organizations are you involved with?
I joined the Big Brothers and Big Sisters organization in 1993.
Are you aware of a curfew ordinance in the city of New Provincial?
Yes.
As a law enforcement officer, what are your feelings towards this ordinance?
I support the ordinance wholeheartedly. It's helped a lot with the crime rate around. There's been a lot less juvenile incidents around the city.
Are you personally familiar with Charlie Camage's restaurant?
Yes, I am.
How are you familiar with Charlie Camage's?
Charlie asked me in spring of 1993 to start frequenting his restaurant, and it was on my regular patrol route.
On the night of May 19th, could you please describe to the court the events of that night?
Yes, I walked in the room, and there were I looked around the room, and there were several teenagers standing at a video game. So I thought that one of them was under 17. So I walked over there, and I asked them for their identification, and one of them was under 17, and so I cited her for the curfew violation.
What kind of identification did you ask for?
A state-issued driver's license or identification card.
How long did it take you to walk from the entrance of Charlie Camage's restaurant to get back to where the group was standing?
I'd say approximately 10 or 15 seconds.
Thank you.
Cross.
Yes. May we proceed?
Okay.
You sometimes break up fights between commercial fishermen and college students.
Yes.
In fact, these fights are what you see as a rise in crime.
Objection, relevance.
Response to the objection basis.
Your Honor, this is going to show the fact that the rise in crime has not been caused by juveniles, it's been caused by older people who aren't affected by the curfew.
Your objection was relevant, is that correct?
Yes, it was.
Objection's overruled. You may proceed.
Would you like me to
You may
repeat
answer
the
the
question?
question.
Yes, please.
These fights are what you see as a rise in violent crime.
Partly, not entirely.
There have been no reported rapes, murders, or even serious batteries in New Provincial for the last 10 years.
Correct.
You're familiar with the Rust Stop Massacre?
Yes.
And this occurred 10 miles outside of New Provincial.
Yes.
You're also familiar with the curfew ordinance?
Yes, I am.
The curfew states anyone under 17 is a minor.
Yes.
16 and under are the only ones affected by this ordinance.
Yes.
And 17 and 18-year-olds are not affected in any way.
They don't have to abide by the curfew, no.
The groups who cause trouble at Charlie's are those in the age group of 16 to 18 and college students.
Excuse me?
The groups who cause trouble at Charlie's are in the 16 to 18 age group and college students.
Yes.
You're familiar with Jess Kidding?
Yes, I am.
You were not very pleased when you cited him for reckless operation and his father got it moved down to speeding.
No.
You were also irritated on the night of May 19th when you were not able to cite anyone in a bar fight.
No, I was upset because they called me to the scene, but they didn't tell me what was going on. Therefore, it was absolutely useless for me to have even showed up.
Your Honor, could you please instruct the witness to answer my question? I asked her if she was irritated.
You need to answer the defense's question to the best of your ability as the question is phrased.
Would you like me to repeat it?
Go ahead.
You were irritated on the night of May 19th when you were not able to cite anyone at a bar fight.
Yes.
You went directly to Charlie's right after this incident.
Yes.
And upon entering the restaurant, you saw Jess Kidding and a group of young people standing behind a video game.
Yes.
And then you proceeded to make a direct line for this group of teenagers.
Yes.
You removed Jess from the video game.
Did I remove Jess from the video game?
You removed Jess from the video game.
I asked Jess what he was doing there.
You put your hand on his shoulder and turned him around.
Yes.
You then proceeded to ask what they were doing.
Yes.
And then you asked for identification from Molly Roller.
Yes.
Holly attempted to explain herself, didn't she?
Yes, she did.
And you did not believe this explanation.
No.
In fact, you said, "Oh, sure, you're just leaving a religious meeting." Right. Well, I guess I'm not surprised you eclectics worship Morgan combat.
No, I did not say that.
A lot of teenagers get nervous in the presence of police officers.
Yes, that's true.
You identified several other teenagers that night,
Yes.
and all of them but one were over 17.
There were 2 that I cited for the curfew violation.
You do not feel that Charlie's is an appropriate place for religious worship.
No.
In fact, you don't even believe that eclecticism is a true religion.
It doesn't seem it.
There is an exemption for bona fide religions in the new provincial curfew ordinance.
Yes.
Could you please define bona fide for the court?
I don't claim to be an expert on definition.
Officer Order, you are the one who has to make a judgment on the scene as to whether or not something is a religion, but you don't know what a bona fide religion is?
They weren't participating in a religion. They were playing a video game.
You do not know what a bona fide religion is.
A religion such as Christianity or Judaism, whatnot.
Thank you, Your Honor. We have no further questions.
Redirect.
I have no questions.
Redirect, or probably there's no recross then. That's it. Does prosecution ask?
Yes, we do, Your Honor.
Defense may call the first witness.
Your Honor, the defense would like to call Ms. Holly Roller to the stand.
You may proceed.
Would you please state your name for the record?
Holly Roller,
Where do you reside?
2324 Yada Road, New Provincial, Ohio.
How old are you now?
I'm 16 years old.
Do you attend church?
Yes, I attend the First Eclectic Church.
Are you a religious person?
Yes, I'm a very religious person.
What religion do you practice?
Eclecticism.
Could you please describe eclecticism for the court?
Yes, eclecticism is a religion that believes all religions deserve equal respect.
Are you a member of any religious study groups?
Yes, I started a religious study group for our church's youth on Thursday evenings.
Why did you start this study group?
The youth of our church weren't always getting the full understanding of the Wednesday night services, and so we got together to better understand and discuss some of the things that we would be hearing in those, and also to talk about some religious things that we were interested in.
Could you describe the format for one of these meetings?
We didn't really follow a standard format. It just depended on what kind of religious things we wanted to discuss. Usually we would read from a text and then we'd all discuss it.
Is there any reason for your later meetings?
We had our meetings in the afternoon because that time period was just more convenient for the people that attended the group.
Do you ever miss regularly scheduled church services?
I miss the Wednesday church services during soccer season.
Is this okay with your parents?
Yes, my parents think that this is okay because it's good discipline and it helps me have good discipline and sportsmanlike skills.
Were you present at the meeting on May 19th?
Yes, I was.
Who else was attending the meeting that night?
Jess, April, B, and some new people.
Do you recall what the group was discussing at that meeting?
I think we were discussing some stuff that we had gone over during our social studies class that week.
Did anyone leave the table before the meeting was over?
Yes, Jess did.
Did you ever leave the table after Miss Kitty had left?
Yes, I did.
And why did you leave?
To use the restroom.
When you went to the restroom, where was everyone else?
There were a few people left at the table, and there were also some people at the video game watching Jess.
Could you describe to the court what happened on your way back from the restroom?
On my way back from the restroom, Jess called me over to the game, and since she'd been saying stuff all night, I decided to go ahead and stop so she really wouldn't get mad at me. And so I stopped for about 5 seconds, and then Officer Order walked in.
What did Officer Order do?
Well, Officer Order scanned the area and made a direct line to us and pulled Jess off the machine. And he said, "What are you doing here?" And Jess made some kind of rude comments.
What did Officer Order do when he found out you were only 16?
When he found out I was only 16, I did try to explain why we were there, but he would not listen to me, and he made some type of snide remark, something to the extent, "I'm not surprised you eclectic worship morbid combat."
Thank you. We have no further questions at this time.
Ron,
Could you please report?
you may proceed.
How old are you?
I'm 16.
Were you studying world religions in your school social studies class?
Yes.
What religions were you studying that week in class?
Buddhism.
Were the religions you studied in class the same as that you discussed in your youth meeting on the night of May 19th?
Yes, they were.
Did you have book reports due in this class?
Yes.
Did you or any member of your group study and or prepare for these book reports at the youth meeting?
Someone might have.
What books were found on the table on the night in question?
The only books that I know for sure were on the table, because we weren't using the books, we were just mainly having a continued discussion from the class, were the book about Buddhism, and some kids had gone to the library before, but I don't know what they brought.
Do you miss Wednesday night services for soccer practice?
Yes, I do.
Objection, Your Honor. This is already stated off this.
Response to the objection with the
I'll
question.
withdraw the question.
Thank you.
Do you need a Charlie Fromage as a public place?
Yes, we did.
Does Charlie's have a selection of video games?
Yeah.
On the night of May 19th, did anyone from your group play any video games?
As I said before, just kidding.
Please answer my question yes or no as they are asked.
Yes, they were.
Do you wear a watch?
No.
Did you wear a watch on the youth meeting on May 19th?
No, I wasn't paying attention to
Please
the
just
No,
answer
I
my
wasn't.
question yes or no. Do you know exactly how long you were standing at the video game Morbid Combat?
Around 5 seconds.
But you stated earlier you didn't wear a watch, correct?
I said around 5 seconds, I didn't say for sure.
Did you pause to see how long Just Kidding was, or did you pause to see how Just Kidding was doing on his Morbid Combat game?
Yes, I did.
How many people were standing around Just Kidding when he was playing?
Objection, Your Honor. What is the relevancy of how many people were standing there?
Response to the objection on the basis of relevance.
I'm trying to prove somewhat of a time range because I'm trying to prove how much information she knows may have a relevancy to how long she was there. She may have been there longer than she claims.
Court's going to sustain the objection on the basis of relevance.
Was Just Kidding's score really high?
Objection, Your Honor. What is the relevancy of this question?
Response to the objection on the basis of relevance.
I am again trying to prove how much she knows may affect how long she was there.
Court's going to sustain the objection on the basis of relevance.
Was there an adult chaperone or supervisor from your church attending the meeting on May
No,
19th?
there was not.
How long do your meetings usually last?
It just depends, sometimes around an hour.
And in your earlier testimony, you stated that you begin your meetings in the afternoon because it was more convenient for other people, correct?
Correct.
Approximately what time was it when Officer Order entered the restaurant?
I don't know.
The reason you eat at the far left table in Charlie Fromage's was for privacy, correct?
Correct.
And you also chose this table because you also chose this booth because it was far away from other tables as well, correct?
That's right.
Your Honor, may I please approach the witness?
You may.
Your Honor, may I submit defense exhibit, or prosecution exhibit 1, a map of Charlie Fromage's?
You may.
The defense already has a copy of this. Could you please hold it up for the court? This is the table you chose to sit at for privacy, correct?
Yes.
And is that the same table that you chose to sit at because it was the table furthest away from any other table?
That's correct.
Is this the gum and candy machine?
Yes, it is.
And do any people ever buy candy, gum?
Objection, Your Honor. What is the relevancy of it?
I'm trying to prove that there were other places that she could have been, so therefore she would not have had to go by the she would not have directly had to go by the morbid combat game to go to the restroom.
Court's going to sustain the objection on the basis of relevance.
Did you tell your mother of the events of May 19th?
Yes.
Are you aware that there's an inconsistency between what you told your mother and what you told the police?
Yes, there is. My mother must have just misunderstood.
Thank you, Ms. Roller. I have no further questions for you at this time.
Redirect.
So what do you want? While you were at the video game, where was everyone else?
Like I said before, there were some people at the game, but there were also people back at the table that I was at in the discussion.
What were the people at the table doing when you left?
Objection, Your Honor. These items were not brought out in my cross, therefore there is no reason for a redirect.
Any response to the objection?
She was asking about the people at the video game and where they were. I'm just trying to find out where the whole group was.
And I think that objection was sustained. So the objection is sustained.
Oh, that's all it was.
Any additional questions on the recross?
None at this time, Your Honor.
Okay, you may step down. Defense may call a second witness.
Your Honor, we call Bobby Roller to the stand.
Please get this. Thanks. You may proceed.
Would you please state your name for the record?
My name is Bobby Roller,
Where do you reside?
2324 Yada Road, New Provincial, Ohio.
What is your relation to Holly Roller?
She is my daughter.
What is crime like in New Provincial?
Next to
Objection,
none.
Your Honor. This witness has no personal knowledge of the question.
May I respond?
Response to the objection.
Miss Roller has lived in New Provincial all her life, and she's reads newspapers and stuff like that. I think she's capable of making an opinion.
Court's going to overrule the objection and allow the witness to answer based upon her experience of living in New Provincial in a general fashion. However, the court would admonish counsel for the defense if this questioning turns into requiring some specific information that she would not have before her, then the court will reconsider the objection.
Would you like me to repeat the question?
Yes, please.
What is crime like in New Provincial?
Next to none.
What kind of daughter is Holly?
Holly's a very good daughter. She hardly gets into any trouble, and she has a good head on her shoulders.
Do you practice any religion?
Yes, I'm an eclectic.
Could you please describe eclecticism to the court?
Eclecticism takes a variety of religions because we believe each religion should be valued, studied, and so we give them all equal respect. And we take bits and pieces of each religion and combine them to form our own.
Does your church own a building?
No, we do not.
How often does the church meet?
We meet once a week.
Is there any building where you always meet at?
Yes.
Objection, Your Honor. Relevance?
Response to the objection, please.
Prosecution has challenged the fact of whether or not eclecticism is a religion. We're just trying to establish what eclecticism is and it involves.
Court's going to overrule the objection.
Would you like me to repeat the question?
Yes, please.
Is there a building that you meet at every week?
Yes, every week we meet at a boathouse.
Does the church have any formal financial system?
No, we do not.
Is Holly an eclectic?
Yes, she is.
Does she hold her beliefs strongly?
Yes, she holds them very strongly.
Have you ever attended any of Holly's study group meetings?
Objection, Your Honor. Leading. His last three questions have been leading questions.
Response to the objection that your last question was leading.
I'm just asking her, has she ever attended any of her daughter's meetings?
Court's going to overrule the objection.
Would you like me to repeat that question?
That's okay. No, I've never attended any of the meetings.
Is there any reason why?
By letting her have the meetings by herself, it provides leadership qualities and responsibility.
Does Holly have any family commitments she must take care of before her meetings?
Just everyday house chores and things like that.
Thank you. We have no further questions.
Would you say that your daughter is responsible? she is honest?
Yes.
May I please approach the witness?
You may.
Will you please read from your affidavit, page 26, paragraph 5, sentences 1 and 2?
Here, right here.
The first 2 sentences of this paragraph.
Not much more. Excuse me. What do I know about the night how Holly was charged with violating the curfew law? Not much more than what my daughter told me. She and her friend Jess and several others were meeting at Charlie's on the Thursday night evening, May 19th. They were the way they had been doing.
Now, will you please read again from your affidavit, page 26, paragraph 6, sentence 2.
She saw my daughter and her friends, and then as they were leaving the restaurant, asked for identification and wanted to know what they were doing when.
Thank you. Was it Holly that told you of the events of the night of May 19th?
Yes.
Are you aware that there is an inconsistency between what she told the defendant and what she swore to the police?
Excuse me?
Are you aware that there is an inconsistency between what the defendant told you and what the defendant swore to the police?
No.
Did you also know that Holly told the police that she was standing by a video game at the time she was cited?
Yes, I've heard about that.
How does that make you feel knowing that your daughter either lied to you or the police?
I didn't consider it to be a big issue because it's not really that important. She was in a religious activity.
Do you believe in civil disobedience?
I guess, yes, in certain cases.
Have you ever participated in civil disobedience?
Objection, Your Honor. What is the relevance of her participation in civil disobedience to the trial?
Response to the objection on the basis of relevance.
I'm trying to prove that there may have been some reason that Holly would purposely not follow this ordinance because it was instilled on her that she did not have to follow it.
Objection sustained.
Do you feel that the curfew ordinance is appropriate for New Provincial?
No, I do not.
That's yes or no, please.
No.
Did you agree with the passing of the curfew ordinance?
No.
How would you describe the curfew ordinance?
The curfew ordinance is something that might be good for a big city, but in New Provincial we have hardly had any crime.
Thank you. In your affidavit, did you state that it was a silly law?
Yes.
And also in your affidavit, did you say that you could not and would not stand for the curfew ordinance?
I don't recall, but maybe.
Have you ever personally had contact with Officer Law and Order?
No, I haven't.
Is God the superior being in the Christian religion?
Yeah.
Does the organization of eclecticism practice the belief that all religions are worthy of consideration?
Yes.
But yet in your affidavit you stated that the reason of the youth meetings, of the First Eclectic Youth Meetings, was so that they can find God and discover their reasons here on earth?
What's the question?
The question is, in your affidavit, did you state that the members of the First Eclectic Church Youth Meeting were trying to seek God and discover their reasons to be on earth, or something along that sort?
Yes.
Does your church own any establishment in which you hold your meetings?
Objection, Your Honor. She has already gone over this. Direct.
Response to the objection that the question's been asked and answered.
I'm going to lead it. I'm asking my own questions and I'm leading up to a different point than what the prosecution made in theirs.
The objection sustained to the fact that that question's been asked and answered.
Could you please name for the court one book of religion, besides the ones or parts of ones already mentioned in either your earlier testimony or affidavit, that exist in the world today?
Just like the Apostles' Creed or something.
That is a part of a religion, or a part of a book already mentioned. Could you name me any other ones?
Not off the top of my head.
Thank you. Did you personally feel that Charlie Formage's was the best place for the first eclectic youth
Objection,
meetings?
Your Honor. This is irrelevant to the case today.
Response to the objection, basis of relevance.
I'm
Or
trying-
we finished with your question.
Yes, I was finished with my question.
Response to the objection.
I'm trying to establish that there may have been some disagreement about Charlie Formage's being the best place for the group to meet.
Let's not over the objection, witness answer the question.
Did you personally feel that Charlie Formage's was the best place for the first eclectic youth meeting?
After we discussed it, I decided that it would
Yes
be okay.
or no?
No, I guess then.
Is it a requirement of the first eclectic organization that all youth attend the Thursday night youth meetings?
No, it's not.
Did your daughter have the choice to attend or not to attend the Thursday night youth meeting on May 19th?
Yes, she had a choice.
Did she have the same choice not to stop and watch Just Kidding play video games?
Yes.
How old is the defendant?
16.
Was there a chaperone or an adult supervisor from your church at the May 19th meeting?
No.
Do you, as the part-time minister of the First Eclectic Organization, value the importance of the Thursday night youth meetings?
Excuse me?
Would you like me to repeat the question?
Yes, please.
Do you, as the minister of the First Eclectic Organization, value the importance of the Thursday night youth meetings?
Yes, I think it's very important because politics.
Thank you.
So.
Ms. Roller, isn't it true that you did not allow Holly to leave the house for meetings until her chores, like washing the dishes, are done?
Yes.
Thank you, Ms. Roller. I have no further questions for this witness at this time.
Redirect.
Your Honor, we have no further questions for this witness.
Prosecution, we should make their closing argument.
Yes, we do, Your Honor. Could you give me just a moment? Ladies and gentlemen of the court, you have a tough task ahead of you today. The defendant, 16-year-old Holly Roller, has come to you with a problem that was a decision she made on the night of May 19th. She has decided to break ordinance number 21309, also known as the curfew ordinance. And now she is come pleading to you, wanting you to change the entire curfew ordinance so she will not get in trouble for a poor decision that she made. Holly's defense is based on Section 1, Subsection 10, Part G of the curfew law. The part of this ordinance states the exemptions of the curfew law, and the one that the defense thinks applies to religion reads as follows in its entirety. Quote, attending a bona fide school or religious activity supervised by adults, or going to or returning home from, without any detour or stop, a bona fide school or religious activity supervised by an adult, end quote. The prosecution has proved this exemption of the curfew law does in no way apply to this case. It is very questionable if eclecticism is a religion at all. The part-time leader of this organization is obviously in favor of the Christian religion by referring to the only superior being as being God and saying that the reason that the youth meetings were held was so that they could find God. Also, when asked, she could not tell me one other book of religion. If the basis of eclecticism deals with all of the religions of the world, we would figure that the leader would at least know another one other than the ones she had already stated, wouldn't we? Eclecticism is an organization which has no creed, no building, or any fundamental beliefs. Although a building might not be a necessity to every religion must have a church, or must have a creed or fundamental belief to have anything to believe in at all. At best, the organization of eclecticism can be considered a secular philosophy. In Wisconsin versus Yoder of 1972, the Supreme Court ordered that decisions that are based on an individual's own subjective evaluation do not and are not considered to be religious beliefs and therefore are not protected in the same way. This is the case of eclecticism, where they only believe that all religions of the world deserve consideration and respect. At the time of the citation, the defendant was not engaged in religious activity. In the testimony of Officer Law and Order Les Fay, Bobby Roller, and the defendant herself, it was stated that the defendant was at a morbid combat game. Officer Order also said that it took herself 10 seconds to get from the entrance to the video games to the video games, and that she saw a group of teenagers, including the defendant, as soon as she entered the restaurant, making it impossible for Holly to have been there for any less than 10 seconds. Even if eclecticism, with its ill-defined beliefs, were to be considered a real religion, the defendant herself stated that in her affidavit that the discussion was an extension and mere recap of her school social studies class. Both Bobby Roller and the defendant stated that there was no adult supervisor from the church present at the meeting. This right there proves that the whole exemption of the curfew ordinance is invalid. The defense counsel has also tried to prove that the ordinance as a whole is unconstitutional because it infringes on the defendant's First Amendment rights of religion and association. The ordinance is constitutional due to the fact that it is facially neutral. In the Church of Lupemi Balai I Incorporated versus Hialeah of 1993, a law like the one established in New Provincial is constitutional due to the fact that it does not discriminate just one religion. Her rights of association were also not violated. Association rights derive from the First Amendment right guaranteeing freedom of speech, and as such they exist only to the extent of freedom of speech, and are not covered by any other forms of the First Amendment rights, according to the 1989 decisions Dallas versus Strangland. Since the defendant's freedoms of speech are not in question, neither is her freedom of association. Holly also had a chance to obey the ordinance. Les Fay testified to the fact that there was a clock in the restaurant, and therefore the defendant did have a chance to look at the time and leave before 11 o'clock. All she had to do was turn around and look, but this was too inconvenient for her to do. The prosecution has proved beyond reasonable doubt that the defendant, 16-year-old Holly Roller, is guilty as charged. She blatantly chose to break the law when she had many opportunities to obey it. When a person who claims to be as mature and responsible as the defendant does can break the law with no regards to the consequences of her decisions, she needs to receive the punishment she deserves. For all of these reasons, the prosecution is confident that she will find the defendant guilty as charged. Thank you.
Closing argument for the defense.
Yes, Your Honor. May we proceed?
You may.
Before I begin, I would just like to apologize for my voice because I've had a cold. Your Honor, members of the prosecution, today you have seen that Ms. Holly Roller was wrongfully charged with the violation of the newly enacted New Provincial Curfew Ordinance. Ms. Roller was simply a victim of sloppy, prejudiced police work. Officer Order has shown a dislike for the First Eclectic Church. This is evidenced in her handling of the situation on May 19th. Her disregard for Holly's religion and quick citation show us not a concerned police officer, but a frustrated officer looking for a victim. Holly was participating in her study group, but just prior to Officer Order's entrance, she had merely gone to the restroom. Stopping to glance at her best friend Jess's video game, on the way back, Officer Order struck her, without giving any real chance for explanation. The prosecution claims that the meeting was not under adult supervision. However, the ordinance nowhere clearly defines what an adult is. Law and Order testified that anyone under 17 is a minor. Therefore, we must assume that anyone 17 and older is an adult. Therefore, the meeting was supervised by adults. Thomas Jefferson once wrote, "If thinking men would have the courage to think for themselves and to speak what they think, it would be found they so not differ in religious opinion as much as is supposed." The eclectics are these people. They're tired of being bound to the doctrines of bona fide religions. They meet every week to practice their fundamental belief that all religions are worthy of respect and study. Bobby Roller explained that each eclectic has beliefs and individual practices that are held just as strongly and are just as valid as those of more traditional religions. The Supreme Court has ruled that religious beliefs need not be acceptable, consistent, or even comprehensible in order to merit First Amendment protection. These choices are more than just personal. They are heartfelt beliefs that have been felt by many since 1968. They're more than just Holly's beliefs. They're beliefs of every eclectic. We, however, question the very constitutionality of this ordinance. The ordinance only acknowledges bona fide religions. What is a bona fide religion? Officer Order could not even give us a clear definition. If the ones who uphold the law cannot define what a bona fide religion is, how can they say that eclecticism is not? As Holly has testified, students are very busy people. If the city prohibits these students from practicing their religion when they are able to, the city is unconstitutionally violating Holly's right to religious expression. When government seeks to limit fundamental rights, it must first prove that there's a compelling interest for the legislation. The prosecution failed to provide any substantial evidence to indicate that need for a curfew. As Bobby Roller, a longtime resident of New Provincial, stated, crime is next to none. Even with a compelling interest, the city must narrowly tailor the law to accomplish its goals while avoiding unnecessarily infringing on fundamental beliefs. Hundreds of activities are now illegal for our city's innocent children simply because of this curfew. Law and Order testified that 16 and under are the only ones affected by this curfew. However, 17 and 18-year-olds are also part of the problem. Even with this curfew in effect, 2/3 of this so-called problem will still be on the streets of New Provincial. In enacting the ordinance, this city has crossed over yet another constitutional boundary. Fundamental rights apply to persons regardless of age. Excuse me. However, there are 3 circumstances that allow government to restrict the fundamental rights of minors. They are the peculiar vulnerability of children, their inability to make critical decisions in an informed and mature manner, and the importance of parental role in child rearing. The prosecution has shown no evidence that tells us that any of these conditions is applicable. If anything, we have seen that Holly Roller was trying to make informed and mature decisions, therefore eliminating her vulnerability. Because Holly and the group had received parental permission for these meetings, the parental role was not being threatened either. From what you have seen and heard in this trial, it should be clear to you that Holly is innocent. She was the victim of a prejudiced police officer. It has been proven that the curfew ordinance of New Provincial would not survive the scrutiny required of a law that limits fundamental rights, and therefore this ordinance should be ruled unconstitutional and removed from the city code. As my co-counsel stated earlier, the prosecution has the burden of proof. Their job today was to prove Holly innocent, guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. It is evident to see that they have not, so you must find Holly innocent. Thank you.
If it may please the court, the defense has just tried to prove that Officer Law and Order, a polite, respectable officer of the peace, has a bias against the eclectics. But to the contrary, the eclectics have a major bias against Officer Order. The leader admitted to having a bias against Officer Order without ever having met the officer. Les Fay testified that she heard Jess refer to the officer as the Gestapo, and on numerous occasions, Jess and his friends have referred to the officer as Old Law and Order, a name in which they know that she does not approve of. And although Officer Order might have been a little angry on the night of May 19th, she's professional enough to contain her frustrations without happening to take it out on a 17-year-old boy. The officer testified that she in no way yanked around anyone on the night of May 19th, only turned just kidding around.
Objection, Your Honor. This is beyond my closing statement. I never once addressed the fact that Officer Order turned Jess around.
I am trying to prove that the eclectics have a bias, and I really would have wished if the prosecution or the defense had waited till I was finished with my rebuttal before they interrupted me.
I'll entertain the objection at the end of the rebuttal.
The officer testified that she in no way yanked around anyone on the night of May 19th, only turned just kidding around after he and his friends repeatedly disrespected him. The officer also testified that the defendant gave a shaky story and therefore proceeded to follow procedure and cite the 16-year-old defendant. Just because the eclectics think that this is unconstitutional, it is for no reason that there's no reason why they still should not follow the laws as they are applied. Thank you.
Did you want to restate your objection for the record?
Yes, Your Honor. I would just want to object to the fact that I never once in my closing statement addressed the fact that the encounter between Jess and Law and Order at all.
Response to the objection?
Although she did not directly address it, the fact that it was brought out in court the defense may have tried to prove that that Officer Order had a bias against him, and that was the main reason for yanking Just Kidding around. But I was just trying to rebut to the fact that she in no way did, and no way had a bias against any one of the eclectics.
Let's go over the objection. Okay, it appears according to the rules that now I'll excuse the other two judicial panelists to go begin their deliberations, and I'm to remain on the bench for 3 minutes in case either team has any problem or any belief that there's been a material violation of any rule during the trial. This is the time to bring it to my attention. So I'll be out here for 3 minutes if you have any of those that we need to discuss.
We would like to object, we have a problem with the opening and closing. The outside materials were used in both opening and closing, which would be everything in a reference to Thomas Jefferson and our forefathers. None of this was brought up in the trial manual that we received.
Response to the objection.
We were simply taking a quote from one of our founding fathers just to help prove the fact that religious expression is guaranteed to everyone, and that's what our nation was built upon, and we cannot go back on that now.
What I'm to do then is to take that back when we go into deliberations with the other judicial panelists and discuss that. If we find a material violation of the rule, then we'll take certain action, and if we don't, we'll indicate that also. Anything else? Now's the time where I, as the presiding judge, gets to provide something called debriefing comments, and that's supposed to be on the strengths and weaknesses of each team's performance. And I'd like to combine the two teams because it was very easy to find strengths back there and very difficult to find weaknesses. Everybody did an excellent job. Before we get to that, I'm going to discuss the material violation issue, which I discussed with the other judicial panelists. And we have decided that we do not find a material violation here. As you find in the real courtroom, there's a lot of creativity and a lot of latitude allowed on opening and closing statements. And so although this might not have been specifically covered in the materials, and again, in real life, it might not specifically have been covered, especially something like a quotation or referring to a historical source. It's something that frequently happens even in closing or opening, so we don't find any violation there. With regard to both teams, we found that both of you laid a good foundation for what you were going to show in your case. It was sort of like a roadmap. You told us where you were going, and then you proceeded with your witnesses to get there. And that, for judges, that makes it real easy to decide a case and real easy to hear the evidence when you know that's going to be presented, and it's presented in a concise, orderly fashion as it was by both sides today. I think some attorneys who practiced in court before me in the last 10 years could take a lesson from all of you in terms of how well you were prepared, and also another important lesson in courtroom courtesy. I think a lot of times these days attorneys are a lot more casual about appearing in court and are not as concerned about courtroom etiquette, as we call it, and I think in this case you all could have taught them lessons in terms of both your preparation and also your behavior in court. It was very professional. Another thing that we noticed was with regard to objections, and we noticed basically two things. First of all, it was good that both sides made objections. A lot of times when you get caught up in a trial, you're listening to the evidence, you're worried about putting on what you're going to say next, and you simply forget about making objections, and neither team did that in this case. There were objections made. The second point about objections, which is even more impressive, because new attorneys every day, and even some older attorneys have problems with this, is recovering when your objection is overruled. A lot of times I've had attorneys stand in court sort of with their mouth open and then just not know where to proceed from that point. And anybody in this situation today who had an objection overruled very easily regrouped and went on about to present his case, and that's was a real impressive thing to see. And I think that pretty much covers everything. Everybody did a good job. Should we go on to the awards then?
Well, I'm going to be presenting the award for the outstanding witness. And as I mentioned this morning, I do think everybody here was deserving of an award, but we can only choose one. And out of all the witnesses, we felt this witness in particular was most believable in her characterizations, and was most articulate and responsive, and seemed very natural and comfortable with giving her testimony, and she was very knowledgeable of the case facts and stuck to the facts of the case. And we felt that the outstanding witness was Jennifer Howe.
I get to present the Outstanding Attorney Award, and we had a very difficult time with this, because all four attorneys did, as Judge Colman has indicated, all four attorneys did a very good job with the objecting and recovering. However, we chose the attorney that I feel probably did the best job at recovery, and had some very good objections. And the witness asked for a question to be repeated, did a very civil, good job at repeating the questions, etc. And Brandon, I believe is it Combies? Comedies.
I'd like to thank all the students for participating today, the families who are here, and the teachers and legal advisors, because you all put a tremendous amount of work into this. It's really been a fun day for us. Thank you.